One day they were texting you constantly, sharing jokes and making plans for the future, and the next, they were gone without a trace. No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence. It is a feeling that settles in your chest like a heavy stone, leaving you checking your phone and wondering if you missed a sign or said something wrong. Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm really glad you're here today. We are going to talk about something that feels deeply personal but is actually a widespread modern phenomenon that leaves millions of people confused every single day. We are talking about ghosting. But before you start spiraling into self-doubt, I want to open a door for you that usually stays locked. Most people assume ghosting is an act of calculated cruelty or a clear sign that they weren't good enough. But what if I told you that the silence is rarely about you at all? In fact, psychologists suggest that ghosting often points to complex, hidden layers within the person who disappeared. Layers involving fear, anxiety, and a genuine inability to handle human connection. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you won't just understand why they left, you will finally feel the peace of knowing it wasn't your fault. When we try to understand ghosting, we first have to look at the psychology of avoidance, because at its core, ghosting is an avoidance strategy gone wrong. Research points to the fact that for many people, the idea of a confrontation, even a gentle breakup or a polite, "I'm not interested," triggers a physical stress response in their body. Their heart races, their palms sweat, and their brain screams at them to run away from the discomfort. It is not that they want to hurt you, it is that they are terrified of the awkwardness of the truth. But here's the part most people never realize. For someone with deep-seated conflict anxiety, disappearing feels like a survival mechanism. They convince themselves that if they just slip away quietly, the problem will evaporate without anyone having to feel the sharp sting of rejection. Of course, we know that isn't true, but in their mind, the silence is a shield. They are protecting themselves from the guilt of hurting you, ironically causing more pain by doing so. Think about that for a second. They are running from the guilt of hurting you, yet their method causes the exact thing they fear. This leads us to another major factor that is often overlooked, which is the sheer crushing weight of emotional overwhelm. We live in a world where we are constantly bombarded by digital noise, expectations, and the pressure to be on 24 hours a day. For some people, especially those who struggle with emotional regulation or introversion, the expectations of a budding relationship can suddenly feel like too much to carry. They might like you, they might even care about you, but their internal battery has drained completely. Instead of communicating that they need space or that they are moving at a pace they can't sustain, they simply shut down. It is often described as a freeze response. They see your text message pop up, and instead of feeling excitement, they feel a wave of anxiety. Thinking, "I don't have the energy to be the person they need me to be right now." So they put the phone down, telling themselves they will reply later when they feel better. But then, later, becomes a day, and a day becomes a week, and suddenly the shame of not replying becomes a wall too high to climb over, so they just never come back. But this next insight hits harder than you might expect, because it challenges the way we view nice people. There is a psychological concept often seen in people who are chronic people pleasers. They ghost not because they are mean, but because they have a distorted view of kindness. These individuals often grew up in environments where saying no was not safe or where negative emotions were suppressed. As adults, they simply do not have the vocabulary or the emotional tools to set a boundary. They operate under the illusion that disappearing is easier, or nicer, than having a difficult conversation. They tell themselves, "If I just stop replying, they will get the hint and move on, and I won't have to be the bad guy who rejects them directly." It is a logic deeply flawed by immaturity, but it is real to them. They are prioritizing their immediate comfort over your long-term closure. And this is where the psychology gets even more interesting. This behavior often stems from a fear of their own vulnerability. We have to talk about vulnerability because it is the kryptonite for many people who ghost. When a connection starts to deepen, when things move from superficial texting to real emotional intimacy, that is often the exact moment they pull the parachute cord. You might have thought things were going perfectly because you were getting closer, but for someone with an avoidant attachment style, that closeness feels dangerous. It feels like a loss of independence. Research in relationship psychology suggests that when intimacy increases, an avoidant person's instinct is to restore their distance to feel safe again. Ghosting becomes the ultimate way to regain control. By cutting the cord instantly, they act out a subconscious script that says, "I will leave you before you have the chance to hurt me or engulf me." Most people miss this completely because they look at the good dates and the fun conversations and think, why would they leave this? But the reality is, they didn't leave because it was bad, they left because it was becoming real. And real is terrifying for someone who doesn't know how to hold space for another person's heart. If you've ever blamed yourself after being ghosted, you're not alone, and I want you to take a deep breath right now and let that tension go. It is a natural human reaction to look inward when something goes wrong. We replay every conversation, every joke, every emoji, searching for the error we made that caused them to vanish. But the psychology of the ghoster reveals that their behavior is usually a pattern, not a reaction to a specific flaw in you. Many people who ghost do it serially. They repeat this cycle with friends, family members, jobs, and romantic partners because it is their default coping mechanism for stress. It is a sign of emotional immaturity and a lack of communication skills, neither of which you can fix for them. You could have been the perfect partner, the funniest date, or the most understanding friend, and the outcome likely would have been the same. Because the issue lies in their internal inability to bridge the gap between their feelings and their words. Here's the surprising part that really shifts the perspective. We often assume the person who ghosted is off living their best life, completely unbothered, while we are stuck in pain. While that can sometimes be true for those with narcissistic traits, for many others, the act of ghosting carries its own heavy burden of lingering shame. They know they did something cowardly. They know they left a loose end. Psychologists suggest that people who cannot communicate effectively often suffer from low self-esteem and a fragmented sense of self. They don't respect themselves enough to honor their own word, so they certainly struggle to respect others. When they ghost you, they are reinforcing a narrative within themselves that says, "I am not capable of handling adult situations." So while you are hurting from the silence, they are often stuck in a cycle of avoidance that prevents them from ever forming the deep, lasting connections they secretly crave. They are building their own cage of isolation, one unanswered text at a time. But let's pivot for a moment to why this hurts you so much, because understanding your own brain is the key to healing. There is a specific psychological reason why ghosting feels physically painful, often more so than a direct breakup. It's called the Zeigarnik Effect. This is a principle that states our brains are wired to remember incomplete tasks or unresolved situations much better than completed ones. When someone says, "It's over," your brain can file that information away as a closed chapter. It hurts, but it's finished. But when someone ghosts, the story has no ending. Your brain stays in a hyper-aroused state, constantly looping the scenario, searching for the missing piece of the puzzle to close the loop. You aren't just sad, you are cognitively stuck. This ambiguity triggers the same pathways in the brain associated with physical pain. So if you feel like you are going crazy trying to figure it out, you aren't. Your brain is just trying to protect you by solving a mystery that has no clues. And this detail might change how you see ghosting forever. We have to recognize the role of modern culture in this behavior. We live in an age of infinite choice, dating apps and digital disposability. There is a pervasive illusion that there is always someone better, someone newer, or someone easier just one swipe away. This commodification of people reduces human beings to profiles. It becomes deceptively easy to dehumanize the person on the other end of the screen. If they have never seen you cry, never held your hand while you were sick, or never met your friends, it is easier for their brain to categorize you as content rather than a person. This doesn't make it right, but it helps explain the disconnect. They aren't just rejecting you, they are engaging in a cultural habit of low accountability. Recognizing this helps you take it less personally. You are caught in a systemic issue of modern communication, where manners have not yet caught up with technology. So, how do you move forward when the silence is deafening? The first step is to change the narrative. Instead of waiting for closure from them, you must create it for yourself. You have to realize that no answer is an answer. In fact, it is a very loud, clear answer. Their silence is telling you that they are unable to meet you at your level of emotional intelligence. It is telling you that they cannot offer you the basic respect of a conversation. Frame the ghosting not as a loss, but as a filter. It successfully filtered out someone who does not have the capacity to be the partner or friend you deserve. If they crumbled under the pressure of a few texts, imagine how they would have handled a real-life crisis, a mortgage, or raising children. In a way, they did you a favor by revealing their limitations early, before you invested years into someone who would eventually retreat when things got hard. But here is a gentle reminder as we start to wrap this up: keep your heart open. It is so easy to let one ghost turn you into a skeptic, to build walls so high that nobody can get in. But that gives the person who ghosted you way too much power over your future. Do not let their inability to communicate change the way you love or the way you show up in the world. You are allowed to be disappointed, you are allowed to be angry, and you are allowed to grieve the potential of what could have been. But remember to ground yourself in the reality of who you are. You are someone who shows up. You are someone who is willing to have the hard conversations. And that is a rare and beautiful thing. Ghosting hurts because it leaves questions behind, but the silence says more about their inability to communicate than it will ever say about your value as a person. The silence is not a reflection of your worthiness to be loved, it is a reflection of their readiness to love. You deserve someone who doesn't leave you guessing, someone whose presence is as consistent as their affection. So take a deep breath, put the phone down, and trust that the right people don't disappear. If this video brought you clarity or comfort, or if you've ever experienced this yourself, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. This is a safe space for us to support each other. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep having these important conversations together. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.